Hey, friends of the dark. We wanted to take a moment away from this episode to tell you a little bit about a recent fan film in the Wheel of Time universe called Binding the Shattered Harp. Written, produced, and acted by Matt Wolf. There are a couple other people worked on this project, but it is a cool new piece of Wheel of Time content of which there are really never enough to consume. So I want to take a moment to tell you about this, especially since it's of much higher quality than some of the short films that have come out in the past, of whom I won't name. Matt Wolf is a friend of ours who's been around in the Wheel of Time spoilers community for quite a while, so give him a shout on Twitter at MalkiersKing and check out bindingtheshatteredharp.com or just Google it.
And he's not just made an old one, he's actually working on a new one. He sent me a draft screenplay, which I've read through, and I'm not going to tell you anything about, even though this is the spoilers podcast. But I'll tell you the title that's on it, which is The Death of Robin Redvest. Very curious to see how this turns out.
Building the anticipation.
It's going to be good. And on Twitter, I got to say, his stuff is just fantastic. Like, if you watch his videos, they are hilarious.
And if you want more dad jokes from the perspective of Lan, you could just check out his Twitter feed. He's just...
No, his recent video about the sword form cleansing the taint was just beautiful. Just beautiful.
Go watch his instructional video.
A sweep and then a stab straight up. Again, that is straight up.
Also, we wanted to encourage any of you out there that is listening to this ad, if you would like your product or service to have a little spot here on the Watt Spoilers podcast, please feel free to message us at wattspoilers@gmail.com.
Let me put it this way. It is a good deal for advertising, especially we're going to keep growing.
Yeah, especially with the show coming out and stuff.
And it's evergreen content. This podcast will always be something people who have read The Wheel of Time will go back and binge and listen to. It's not like news podcasts where people just listen to the latest one.
That's true.
You get your ad in now, people are going to be hearing it for years.
But go ahead, hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Gmail, whatever, and we'll totally get back to you. You're trying to make a business. We're trying to make a business. Let's do something.
Carrier pigeon, telegraph, Pony Express,
Raven,
prophecy.
We're falling down a hole.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick. We are starting tonight with Chapter 11 of The Shadow Rising, What Lies Hidden, and our symbol is the Twisted Stone Ring Terangrial.
We're really getting into Tel'aran'rhiod.
Yeah.
For the first time, and sort of getting into the rules of it, what exactly is going on under the surface. It's no longer just, Ishmael shows up and we're in a dream shard and something appears in the sky.
Everything's
and
confusing.
Weird and nothing makes sense. Now we have rules.
Clad in her shift, Egwene drew a deep breath and left the stone ring lying beside an open book on her bedside table, all flecked and striped in brown and red and blue. It was slightly too large for a finger ring, and shaped wrong, flattened and twisted so that a fingertip run along the edge would circle both inside and out before coming back to where it had started. There was only one edge, impossible though it seemed. She was not leaving the ring there because she might fail without it, because she wanted to fail. She had to try without the ring sooner or later, or she could never do more than dabble her toes where she dreamed of swimming. It might as well be now. That was the reason. It was. The thick leather-bound book was a journey to Tarabon, written by Urian Romovny from Kandor, 53 years ago, according to the date the author gave in the first line, but little of any consequence would have changed in Chanchico in that short a time. Besides, it was the only volume she had found with useful drawings. Most of the books only had portraits of kings or fanciful renderings of battles by men who had not seen them. Darkness filled both windows, but the lamps gave more than adequate light. One tall beeswax candle burned in a gilded candlestick on the bedside table. She had gone to fetch that herself. This was no night to be sending a maid for a candle, Most of the servants were tending the wounded, or weeping over loved ones, or being tended themselves. There had been too many for healing any but those who would have died without it. And the next couple of paragraphs are kind of a description of the room.
Mm-hmm.
Nynaeve and Elaine sitting in chairs. Avienda's still too uncomfortable with the idea of sitting in a chair, so she's sitting on the floor nearby with all her weapons laid out.
Have we talked about the ring and the fact that it's just basically a Mobius strip twisted around a couple times?
Yeah, you brought that up one time, but this would probably be a good time to say it again if you wanted to.
Sort of that physical description and the fact that there's only one edge.
Right.
I mean, we've all done that thing in high school where you take a loop of paper, cut it, high school, middle, whatever, in school, give it a single half twist, and then tape it back together, and then you can follow that one edge around the whole direction. And I think of this as that, just in 3 dimensions, thicker. But it's not a magical item. It's just a kind of a cool geometric shape.
Yeah.
And then I noticed she's reading A Journey to Terabon because she's looking for pictures of Terabon so she can just go there and Teleron Riyadh.
Figure out how to navigate it. And it's pretty clear in these couple of paragraphs that this is the night of the attack. So the battle in the stone just happened and the women are laying down, which is why Avienda's heavily armed and I'm imagining sitting near the door because she's still tense.
I mean, everybody's trying to make an awful lot of decisions right now. There's a lot of fear. There was this big attack. Everyone was planning on leaving. This is their last chance to sort of make a decision about where they're going to go. And so she's desperate to get some sort of information, some confirmation, because they haven't been getting any information out of the Dark Friends.
Right.
Joya and Amiko. And so they're like, well, we need some other source of information. Let's turn to Teleron Riyadh.
Right. This is like their only other option, especially to find out whether or not Joya and Amiko are directing them toward Terabon just as a, oh yeah, you'll figure out what to do if you just go to the other side of the continent. Trust us. Check it out.
Which way to the diner? You want to drive down this dirt road for about 5 miles, take a right at the cow pasture, and when you hit the swamp, you've gone too far.
More or less, but we'll come to see that at least that Tanchico is an important place. The Dark Friends weren't lying, and Joya and Amiko, I imagine, are executed a little bit after this because they told the Aes Sedai and accepted here about the plans for Tanchico.
I think they were executed during the actual battle. We just find out about it here.
Oh, yeah, so they are dead right now in their cells.
I think right now Moraine is coming up from having found the bodies.
I don't know if I should hold off, but Slayer?
Oh, yeah, Slayer.
Executed him? Okay, yeah. Because they never left, nobody went in or out of the cells, and they're just found with their throats slit and their tongues cut out.
I'm fairly certain we get confirmation of that later. I think he talks about killing some Black Ajah in Tyr. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I feel like it's confirmed that he is killed, that they're killed by Slayer.
It would make sense.
There's a whole line here where she says the Shadow has weapons that we know nothing about. Yeah, they have Slayer.
Yeah. The 3 women are gathered around the bed with Egwene in it, who's laying down to go to sleep without the stone ring. So she's trying to enter Teleran Riyadh without the aid of the Terangrial.
This is not that we haven't had proof before because of her visions, and we know they come true, but for her, this is really the first time I feel like she has definitive proof she is a dreamer. She can enter Teleran Riyadh without the aid of a Terangrial.
Yes.
And we don't see any character who can do that who's not a dreamer.
And we'll see in a bit that she seems pretty talented right off the bat, despite her lack of training. I kind of wanted to note that Nynaeve says something like, "Are you certain you want to try to do it this way?" And Egwene says, "Certainly." And she's trying to not show how nervous she is. And part of the reason she's nervous, not just because of the dangers of Teleran Riyadh, are, because of what just happened, right? Like an hour ago, there were Trollocs filling the stone and people were killing each other everywhere.
And Rand created semi-sentient lightning to kill all the Trollocs.
Yes.
Which was also somewhat terrifying.
Fair enough. And kind of along the line of all the PTSD that happens in these books that we talk about pretty often, I just kind of noted that one of Egwene's stray thoughts is of a woman with her throat being cut by a Trolloc screaming high-pitched like a rabbit. In her memory, she kills the Trolloc, but then they're just both dead. The woman and the Trolloc.
It's too late.
Yeah. Her shrill scream would not go away, was one of the stray thoughts.
I occasionally see Robert Jordan's war experience in the books.
Yeah, this is one of the few series or anything I've ever read, really, where, you know, in lots of fantasy and science fiction literature, like, people are dying left and right. Like, there's wars and battles and whatever. And it's always like the hero, like, strides confidently away from the battle without any emotional repercussions of having just murdered tons of people, you know?
Or having had friends murdered.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And we get to at least hints of that in here, where Egwene's laying down trying to go to sleep, and the woman is still screaming in her head.
She's already pretty fragile after her experience with the Sean Chan.
True.
And this is just another, you know, horrific, you know, you're seeing trauma in front of you. You are experiencing trauma. You're in a life or death situation, adrenaline going, all that kind of stuff. And I feel like that's something that Jordan writes better than almost anybody else.
And one of the many things that I think RJ gets right to bring these characters to life, like it makes them feel real.
Mm-hmm.
They're not heroes in a story. I mean, they are heroes in a story, but they feel more like likely people who could be real.
And they change over time. I guess that's one of the things, again, I can praise Robert Jordan for 1,000 things in 1,000 different ways, but I think his characters have always put him above and beyond other authors. And one of the ways that he has really surpassed other authors to me is that his characters change over time. And there's so many authors where I love the character as they present them to me.
Mm-hmm.
But after a while, the character just gets stale and becomes a parody of themselves.
Right. They kind of end up falling flat and...
Flanderization, if you want to look up that term. That, you know, Rand is never a parody of himself. Egwene is never a parody of herself. They're always changing and different and affected by the experiences they have gone through, and that impacts how they react.
They have real feeling prejudices, and they make mistakes and miscommunicate and
act on incomplete information based on gut feelings and
come to just wrong conclusions about things.
Lie to themselves about their own motivations. Like, these are things we all do, and it's so hard to write that into a story like this. Anyway, enough of praising Robert Jordan.
Right after that, Aviendha has a great idea where she's like, "Hey, well, if you're not going to use the stone ring, why don't one of us go with you to watch your back, right?" Which is a great idea that the other three women write off for I don't know why. Although Nynaeve says any of us can use it, even you, Aviendha, because a woman needn't be able to channel because they don't know Aviendha can channel yet.
Right.
You only have to sleep with it. Even a man might be able to do it. But for all we know, or we don't know Tel'aran'rhiod as well as Egwene, or the rules of it. Aviendha nodded, and she says, "I see. A woman can make mistakes where she does not know the ways, and her mistakes can kill others as well as herself." Which is, I feel like, a wise interpretation of Nynaeve's possibly slightly ignorant initial response.
Well, and at the same time, it's not like Egwene knows anything more than the two of them.
Not much.
She's blundering along just as much as they are. She's just been blundering for a few more nights. She's, you know, this is really, it should be as much pointed at Egwene as it is at Nynaeve, of like, you do not know what you're doing. There are so many dangers. And a stray thought almost gets you killed by a lion.
Yeah, or whatever that animal is.
I believe in the Waste it's a lion.
Oh, there's a lion watching. We'll be there in a minute.
Okay,
but
yeah.
It's like a boar or something.
Well, she says it's an animal. I think she doesn't know what a lion is, and so she just calls anything that.
She also thinks the elephant looks like a boar.
Well, I think that's a saber-toothed tiger.
Okay.
And so the fact that she thinks the saber-toothed tiger looks like a boar and the lion looks like a boar means she thinks big cats look like boars.
Something with tusks.
Yeah. Going back to the fact that only Egwene is good at Tel'aran'rhiod, it seems like between the other two ter'angreal they took from the two Black Ajah.
in theory, all 4 could go in together.
Right. Because you give Egwene and Nynaeve, well, Nynaeve would have to be angry because she'd have to channel into it.
Yeah, I suppose so.
But you certainly could give Elaine, one of the channeling ones, Avienda, the ring, and then Egwene can go in on her own. But, I mean, that's important because from now on, they're going to use them. I mean, Avienda could jump in with the ring because she doesn't know how to channel yet.
Yeah.
I don't know. She has the spark.
Right. But she hasn't had any training yet.
Right. Has she channeled for the first time? Or is it just that she will soon?
I think that she will soon, and which is one of the reasons why Amis sent a letter a month ago, which we find out about later also, to the stone to say, there is a willful girl named Avienda who will be returned to the waste. Just show this letter to Ruark and he'll carry out my orders.
I thought you'd say he was going to carry out Avienda, just literally over his shoulder.
I believe that if he had to, he would. We see some brief descriptions of Teleran Rayad, this is kind of like a little bit of a knowledge drop.
Yeah.
Where regular people who aren't dreamers, sometimes their dreams butt up against the world of dreams and they intersect for a few moments, essentially. A non-dreamer can show up in Teleran Rayad accidentally, but...
And you can get hurt badly if you show up. I also remember reading that if you brush against the world of dreams, what normally would kill you will maybe just bruise you, which is why sometimes people wake up with like an aching back or like sore muscles.
Makes sense.
Because they've only brushed Teleran Rayad. I think Jordan wrote that the morning after he slept badly and had like a crick in his neck.
Have a couple extra drinks and wake up with bruises. Like, what did I do? More knowledge dropping about the 2 Terangrial that they recovered from Amigo and Joya, the 2 dreaming Terangrial. 2 of 13 are recovered. The Black Ajah still have 11. Egwene doesn't know how to find Mazrim Taim. She doesn't know how to find him, and he's the other thing that Joya and Amigo told.
Right, he's not going to reflect in the world of dreams. There's no way to track him down.
No, and even if you could figure out where he was, he still wouldn't be there.
It's convenient that they get these 2 Terangrial right when they need them, when they're going to split up.
It is convenient, isn't it?
It is very convenient. Robert Jordan.
And a kind of throwaway line that I wanted to note where Egwene thinks like she wishes she could warn the Amyrlin about all these things if only there was a way to pass messages through the dreams. And there is, she just doesn't know.
Ignorance. You use a fraction of what you could. And sort of Lanfear talking to Rand, I sort of feel a similar way about Egwene in the world of dreams. She needs an awful lot of training in order to use the abilities, including doing things like passing messages in the dreams. Did anyone ever figure out if the Amyrlin ever gets the message about Mazrim Taim? I was never able to find any evidence of it either way.
Yeah, I think we talked about that a little, and we kind of decided that even if she did, she might have just been stilled so shortly after that nothing got done.
And also want to note that one of the reasons Teleran Rayad is so dangerous is not only just the natural dangers of Teleran Rayad, but there are 11 other Black Sisters with access to the world of dreams who could be waiting for her.
And this could be a trap.
Totally could be a trap.
Joy and Amico are like, go to Chanchico, see what's going on there.
Check it out in the world of dreams. Chanchico, man.
Let's see, a little bit of talk about what a panarch is, which is essentially like, if there's like, you know, the leader of Congress versus the president, it seems like.
Yeah, it's a power-sharing position.
Yeah.
With the king. Is that a real term, or is that something made up for Wheel of Time? Yeah, panarch.
A panarchy is a real thing. Panarchy, coined by Paul-Émile de Poit in 1860, is a form of government that would encompass all others.
Let's just say it's not a unique term to the Wheel of Time. It means ruler of various kind.
But yes, Egwene asks out loud, like, what's a panarch anyway? And Elaine launches into a long description. Egwene says, I didn't really want to know. But we get a brief description of basically that they're like 2 rulers that run the nation together.
Oh, and apparently people are saying panarchy is a thing, but the title panarch is not necessarily. That may be a Jordan adaptation.
A Jordanism?
A Jordanism.
The Panarch of Tenchiko is equal to the king in authority, Elaine recited. She is responsible for collecting taxes, customs, and duties. He, for spending them properly. She controls the civil watch and the courts, except for the high court, which is the king's. The army is his, of course, except for the Panarch's legion. And then Egwene cuts her off.
What?
And then, as Egwene's laying down, she thinks about thinks about all the weird dreams she's been having, some of which she's sure mean something, but she doesn't know how to interpret them yet.
Oh, I want to talk a little bit about this engraving, the animal with 4 eye sockets.
Oh, yeah.
Well, 2 of those are actually just holes for horns, because this is a sredit, or an elephant.
That's what I thought.
And so if you look at an elephant skull, it looks like it actually has 4 eyes, because it has the places where the horns attach to it. And so what she's describing is tusks, I suppose, not horns.
Oh, yeah. Wow, that looks really weird.
And so there's a central hole that you could take it as a cyclops. Or if you look at the 4 holes on the sides, you could take those as the eyes.
And then the center is the nose, which, I mean, it kind of is. But...
Right. Bananas is saying apparently the myth of cyclopses came from people finding elephant skulls and mistaking them for the central holes in eye hole.
I feel like I've heard that somewhere before.
So yeah, let's talk about her dreams.
Okay, we're going to have to march through these one by one.
Because remember, the dreams, any dream she has of a Taviran are almost certainly prophecy.
Yeah, and at the end of the list, I'll just note this now, there's the line, they were the sharp dreams, the ones she knew meant something. They were hideous, and she did not know what any of them meant.
We know what a few of them mean.
Hindsight. Rand as tall as a mountain, walking through cities, crushing buildings beneath his feet.
So when he uses the Choden Call, the statue comes alive and walks through the city of Manhattan while everyone cheers. Oh, wait, no, that's Ghostbusters. So that's metaphorical of Rand, destroying nations and taking them over and crushing social order.
The kind of, generalized destruction that has to come for reorganization. Rand in chains, and it was he who was the one that was screaming.
I think that is Semirog with the sad bracelet around his neck.
Agreed. Which Egwene will see soon when she goes to Terabon in Teleran Riyadh. Rand building a wall, with him on one side and her on the other. Her and Elaine and others she could not make out. It has to be done, he was saying as he piled up stones. I'll not let you stop me now.
And that represents his whole, I believe, hardening, where he basically is emotionally walling other people out and isolating himself.
Oh, I like that. I wasn't too sure about that one, but I think that's a strong interpretation.
Steel wasn't hard enough. Now he had to become Quendiar. Like that whole line.
Yeah.
People are saying the Rand in chains could very much be him in the box as well.
Yeah.
Basically captured, screaming. So we don't necessarily have to go to literal chains. We could go to just captured.
True. Ogre Tendencies says about the Stonewall dream, no Nynaeve on the other side because she's always with Rand.
It's true.
Till the end. That's a good catch.
He does trust her.
She had dreamed of Aiel fighting each other, killing each other, even throwing away their weapons and running as if they had gone mad.
That's the Shido fighting the rest of the Aiel, and of course throwing away the weapons is when he tells them about the visions.
When people start to break.
Mm-hmm.
What do they call it again? The wayward Aiel who throw their weapons away. The bleakness. Thank you, Bananas.
The brotherless aren't necessarily people suffering from the bleakness. Many of them have just decided that they don't accept that Rand is the Karakarn and have gone over to the Shido.
Yeah.
Whereas the bleakness, I feel like, means that they throw away their weapons and don't fight anymore. They sort of become Gaishain.
Yeah.
For the rest of their lives. They have toe they can't fulfill because they have violated the agreement of the Way of the Leaf.
So their solution is to permanently serve for the rest of their lives, to in some way atone for the sins of their ancestors.
They have toe.
Matt wrestling with a Shanchan woman who tied an invisible leash to him.
Tuon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's leash is just a leash to his heart.
He loves her.
A wolf. She was sure it was Perrin, though, fighting a man whose face kept changing.
Slayer.
Perrin and Slayer.
Yeah.
Because he has 2 faces, literally. I mean, sort of. He can switch between them.
And this is more, in my mind, confirmation that Slayer was the one who kills these 2 women. because we get a reference to him now twice in one chapter.
True. Yeah.
So at least Jordan was thinking about Slayer at that point.
Galad wrapping himself in white as though putting on his own shroud.
White Cloak.
Yeah, Galad becoming a White Cloak. And Gawain with his eyes full of pain and hatred, which is a literal interpretation of the future.
Angry Gawain. Angry Gawain. What a jerk.
Her mother weeping, which I believe is meant to be Egwene's mother weeping, right? During the attacks on the two rivers.
For some reason, I was thinking it was Elaine's mother. I put something about Morgase, but it's not. You're right. It's Egwene, not Elaine. So, I mean, Christine says it could be when her mother hears about her death.
Egwene's death after the last battle?
Or, I mean, it could be what's going on in the two rivers right now with,
right,
like, Perrin's family have been killed. The White Cloaks are harassing.
That was my
everybody
initial.
Back there. Like, there's a lot of reasons why her mother could be weeping.
Right, and Egwene's family stayed, from what I can remember, stays pretty much safe through the entire series, except for Egwene herself, obviously. But just the, all her lifelong friends and neighbors dying in droves is enough to make anyone weep.
Absolutely. So it's not specific enough to narrow one thing down, because I can think of 1,000 reasons why her mother could be weeping.
Right. I think that was it.
And so then she pops into Tanchico right in front of the skeleton.
This close, the skeleton seemed even larger than she had thought. She stood right in front of it, inside like a crowd rope. What do you call that? Like a velvet rope.
Yeah. Crowd control.
That's around the fossils that are on display here.
This is very much a museum in Tanchico. Like, she never uses the word museum because, like, I don't know if they have the concept of it.
I don't think they do. But yeah, I can't remember if they're property of the Panarch or the king or whatever, but they're on display to the public. Anyone can walk in here and look.
And, for her, she's like confirming for the first time that she's made it to Teleron Riyadh on her own. So she's like, the feel was right, that she could even be aware of the difference between this and an ordinary dream, told her where she was.
Yeah.
Like, yes, she's made it to Teleron Riyadh.
There's a little bit with flickering clothes.
Flicker, flicker, flicker.
She embraces Saidar because she's afraid that, she might come under attack. It's possible. And suddenly she's wearing Aiel garb as she sees it, but prettier. And this is her kind of wishing to be a warrior on alert. And so she looks like what she thinks one might look like for a moment.
Here's a hill. I don't know if Travis is here. Is channeling real in Teleron Riyadh.
Uh-huh.
The fact that embracing the power seems to make it easier to make changes seems to indicate that the one power is a separate thing from Teleron Riyadh, and by embracing the one power, it becomes easier to actually make changes in Teleron Riyadh because you have this extra bit of power that's external to the world of dreams. The counter-argument to that is the placebo effect.
Right.
That she embraces the power. I could see you about to say it.
Well, yes. But also that we get a great example of that happening, of that situation happening when, in a moment here, Egwene pops into the waste, and Amis is like, you have no right to be wearing that kind of Aiel garb. Like, you have to earn that. And she strips Egwene naked, and she's standing there in the desert, and then Egwene reclothes herself. She embraces the source and reclothes herself. And Amis seems...
And strips Amis naked.
Oh, really?
Yeah, totally.
She seems surprised that was even possible. And that did make me think that, well, holding the power for one reason or another must make her improve her will or make her believe that her will is improved. Yeah, that whole murky thing that you were getting at.
It doesn't actually make you more powerful, but because thought translates into more power in the world of dreams, what you think happens. If you think you have more power when you embrace the source, you have more power.
Yeah, she's just straight out of the two rivers.
Totally.
She just believes.
She's just
harder.
Stubborn.
I don't know if you want to go over some of the other things in here, in the rune. This one, not 4 eye sockets after all. 2 seem to be for tusks of some kind instead. On the other side, where its nose had been, some sort of monstrous boar, perhaps, though it did not look like any pig she had ever seen.
So there's 2 beasts.
And
right?
the other one was like a saber-toothed tiger. Or
So on one
right?
side, a skeleton of something that looked a little like a bear, if a bear had 2 front teeth as long as their forearm. That I'm thinking giant saber-toothed tiger.
Sure. What was the terrifying thing I saw on Reddit recently? Just called, I think they were called cave bears. They're just giant bears.
The front page of Reddit's pretty terrifying if you look at it. And then, of course, did you catch the giraffe?
Yes.
The 4-footed beast with a neck so long the skull was half as high as the ceiling.
I remember thinking I was very clever on my first read-through when I got that immediately.
A few other interesting things is in Angreal that I think that she ends up getting a hold of that for a while.
Someone does.
Yeah, that gets used a lot.
Is it Elaine and Nynaeve? Did they take it when they go there?
It's a figure of a woman, unclothed, except her hair's wrapped around her as clothing. And that's a description I recognize.
Me too, but I
from
can't.
Later on in the series, and I feel like it's being used by Elaine.
I want to agree with you. I'm gonna go ahead and nod to that.
And then, of course, we get the first view of the sad bracelets.
Yes.
Play a major role in. I mean, there's the whole quest in Tanchico to get a hold of them, and then they give them to Bail Domon, who tries to throw them away, but then he gets captured by the Shan-Chan and Guinan, and she takes possession of them, and then they end up back in the possession of the Shan-Chan, and Semirog gets a hold of them, and that whole leads to the burning off of Rand's hand, and the shattering of the collar, and the use of the true power. And I mean, this is such a it's such an important storyline for Rand's development into Darth Rand. It is really like the breaking point. It is like the thing that gets, like, he nearly kills Min because of these things, and that's where he just breaks.
Yeah.
So important.
In case that ever comes up again and you don't know what we're talking about, these are the sad bracelets.
And they have an official name,
Domination Band. A finely jointed collar and 2 bracelets of dull black metal on a stand by themselves made her shiver. She felt darkness and pain associated with them. Old pain, and sharp. And then we get another cute throwaway. A silvery thing in another cabinet, like a 3-pointed star inside a circle, was made of no substance she knew. It was softer than metal, scratched and gouged, yet even older than any of the ancient bones. From 10 paces, she could sense pride and vanity.
Our plastic trash lasts throughout the ages, outlasts our legends, outlasts our myths, but a Mercedes-Benz plastic hood ornament
Yep.
lasted the ages.
That's what I always thought. Does anyone else have a take on that? I feel like I've seen other people say the same thing on the internet.
The sense of pride and vanity is definitely a knock at Mercedes-Benz owners.
I think so, yeah.
I think Jordan, again, talking about Jordan, like, got cut off that day by someone driving a Mercedes-Benz. Like, God damn douchebags.
Thousands of years in the future, people will remember your pride and vanity. Ages from now. Oh, and then one more. The upper half of a broken figure carved from some shiny white stone. A woman holding a crystal sphere in one upraised hand, her face calm and dignified, and full of wise authority. Whole, she would have stood perhaps a foot tall, but why did she appear so familiar? She almost seemed to call to Egwene to pick her up.
It's a trap!
As her hand grasped it, the power surged within her, into the half-figure, then back into her, into the figure, and back, in and back. The crystal sphere flickered in fitful, lurid flashes, and needles stabbed her brain with each flash. With a sob of agony, she loosed her hold and clasped both hands on her head. The crystal sphere shattered as the figure hit the floor, and broke into pieces. The needles vanished, leaving a dull memory of pain.
So I guess it's not a good idea to reach into the world's most powerful sa'angreal through a broken tera'angreal in the world of dreams.
Is this a broken access key?
That's what I think it is. I think it's a shattered access key.
Or some kind of sa'angreal.
I think at some point Moghedien is in Tenchico's palace and she's checking things out. Because, there's the seal there as well that's been covered up.
Uh-huh.
And she looks at that and is like, trap for anyone foolish enough to pick it up. I'll just leave it there. Just leave this dangerous thing sitting around for anyone to pick up. So I think it is just, like touching a live wire.
Yeah.
If you're a channeler. The insulation has been stripped off, and this thing is going to shock you.
Yeah, I think that's the conclusion we're coming to Ogier, that at some point there may have been more than one of each access key to the Choden Call?
Certainly. They often talk about the access keys as if there were many.
But it looks like we only ever see the one male access key, and we see one female access key that's not broken, and then this broken one. And I think that's all we ever see.
And then I think Nynaeve melts down the female access key process of cleansing the source. The access key.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of with Bananas here, Ogier. I would bet that there were probably several in the past, and now there are only 2 working, one male, one female, luckily.
There's a couple of occasions where the Forsaken talk about them as though there are, I found one of the male access keys or one of the female. Like there are multiple keys, even though there's only one single Sa'angreal, right? Sa'angreals are really hard to make. But once the Sa'angreal is made, Ter'angreal don't seem that hard to duplicate. So you make an access key and then you can duplicate it. I sort of think of the way that like on a web server you have one server, but anyone can log in.
Right. That's exactly the kind of analogy I was thinking. And the internet is the power.
I thought it was the pattern. Money is the power. Any idea why it calls to her?
I don't know, but the same thing happens to Rand when he sees the full Choden Call, the Sa'angreal itself.
I sort of imagine it has something to do with a non-fully trained channeler sort of being open to just resonance.
Probably, and I'm remembering that scene when Rand and Lanfear are walking by the male Choden Call somewhere outside of Tyr, right? Or somewhere in between Tyr and Cairhien somewhere. And Rand starts to, like, his eyes glaze over and he, like, reaches out to it or something, even though it's far in the distance. And Lanfear freaks out. She becomes, like, very scared in that moment. It's, like, the only time in the whole series. And I think that is why. I think Lanfear is aware that there's a dangerous seduction to that amount of power and that he could, obviously accidentally destroy the whole continent, say.
Honey, that's a nuclear bomb. Please don't hit it with a hammer.
Right, he's like a child with the nuclear codes.
Totally. Please don't push that button.
Yeah. Get that kid away from that. Egwene sees Non-Dreamer wandering through the palace for a moment, and he looks at Egwene and calls her Eledra and says, like, oh, I got a great promotion, baby. We're gonna do great. And then he disappears, essentially.
So I looked up Eledra to see if, like, it was related to somebody. There's an Aes Sedai named Eledra.
Really?
But she's Damani, not from Terabon.
Yeah.
Not a Terraboner. It doesn't seem to be the same person at all, but I thought it was funny that he reuses that name for an Aes Sedai later.
There's also Eludra. Or wait, it's Eldra, not Eledra.
Eldra, I think, is how they, if I'm remembering correctly, in the audiobooks. Yeah, Terraboner is a kind of a funny name for people from Terrebone.
That's not how it's actually said, is it? It is? Terraboner?
Terraboner.
I always said Terraboner.
It's definitely said both ways in the audiobooks at various times.
I'm sticking with Bonner, guys, because I just don't want the jokes. So much to search, and she did not even know for what. For something that signified the presence of the Black Aja, or something that indicated some sort of danger to Rand, if either even existed here. Had she been a real dreamer, trained in the use of her talent, she would surely have known what to look for, how to interpret what she saw, but no one remained who could teach her. Aiel Wise Ones supposedly knew how to decipher dreams. Avienda had been so reluctant to talk about the Wise Ones that Egwene had not asked any of the other Aiel. Perhaps a Wise One could teach her, if only she could find one. She took a step toward the square, and suddenly she was somewhere else. Great stone spires rose around her in a heat that sucked the moisture out of her breath. The sun seemed to bake right through her dress, and the breeze blowing in her face seemed to come from a stove. Stunted trees dotted a landscape almost bare of other growth, except for a few patches of tough grass and some prickly plants she did not recognize. She recognized the lion, however, even if she had never seen one in the flesh. It lay in a crevice in the rocks not 20 paces away, black tufted tail switching idly, looking not at her, but at something another 100 strides on. The large boar, covered in coarse hair, was rooting and snuffling at the base of a thorny bush. never noticing the Aiel woman creeping up on it with a spear ready to thrust. Garbed like the Aiel in the stone, she had her shufa around her head, but her face uncovered. The waist, Egwene thought incredulously. I've jumped into the Aiel waist? When will I learn to watch what I think here? The Aiel woman froze. Her eyes were on Egwene now, not the boar, if it was a boar. It did not seem to be shaped exactly right. Egwene was sure the woman was not a wise one, not dressed like a maiden. From what Egwene had been told, a maiden of the spear who wanted to become a wise one had to give up the spear. This had to just be an Aiel woman who had dreamed herself into Teleran Riyadh. Like that fellow in the palace. He would have seen her too, if he had even turned around. Egwene closed her eyes and concentrated her head on one clear image of Tanchico, that huge skeleton in the great hall. When she opened them again, she was staring at the mass of bones.
Yeah, I'll just pop into the waist for a minute. I mean, so she was thinking about trying to find a teacher, and then she found one.
Right.
I wish life worked like that.
It's too bad.
And the first time she pops into the waist, Amis doesn't really... She probably assumes she's just a normal dreamer, because she pops in and then disappears.
Right.
But the second time she goes back, Amis knows something's up with this girl.
Right. She shows up again, and then Amis tracks her down. And there's some lines in here, and I've seen people talking about this in Discord. Just some interesting kind of facts about Teleran Riyadh. One is, like, why are there birds here and not people? Flies buzzed by, roaches and beetles scurrying along in the shadows. Even a pack of lean dogs running down the street.
Wild dogs.
Right.
I think that's the real difference, is domesticated animals do not appear in Teleran Riyadh.
We see songbirds, but not chickens. We see wolves and wild dogs, wolves and jackals and coyotes, but we don't see hounds.
No horses.
Yeah, no horses, no cows, but we see a lion.
Do we see cats?
I don't know, but technically they're not domesticated. No, Zareth? Okay, well.
That's a philosophical question. I feel like, are cats domestic animals? Or
no,
humans
I think not.
Domesticated by cats?
It's not that I'm saying it. Well, the argument that cats aren't domesticated is that they can be rewilded, and within a generation or two, they're just wild again.
Right.
As opposed to, like,
Dogs.
you put a chihuahua out in the forest, and it's not going to do so well.
You put a bulldog out in the forest, it'll never breed. It'll never have offspring.
Yeah.
It can't.
But cats are like, you could take it or leave it. If you stop feeding them, a lot of them just start feeding themselves.
A lot of them feed themselves anyway.
Yeah.
They just come to you for kibble because, they're lazy and fat.
Thanks for the food, human. Here's some fresh meat. I pulled its head off for you.
If all humans died instantly, dogs would mourn and then die with us. Cats would eat our bodies and then move on and be just fine.
And that's not 100%, guys.
Yeah.
They do say, like, some medium-sized breeds would probably survive. Breed with coyotes and go on.
There'd be, like, all the Mexican dogs would survive, and I'm sure a decent number of domesticated animals would form packs and interbreed, but you'd very quickly get a very mongrel-looking dog within a few generations.
Dingoes.
Dingoes ate my baby.
All right, moving forward. She jumped as a shrieking man suddenly plummeted out of the sky in front of her. She only had time to register baggy white trousers and thick mustaches covered by a transparent veil before he vanished, only a pace above the pavement.
Can I just say how much it bugs me that the men of Tanchico have both a mustache and a veil?
Imagine how hard it would be to eat.
Like, one or the other. But, like, wouldn't the mustache, like, stick to the veil and you'd have, like... It's a ridiculous fashion statement.
Well, fashion is also often silly.
Why are you covering your face and then having a ridiculous mustache? And eating has got to be a nightmare. You get under the veil, but over the mustache. It's like, oh, geez. There's like 3 layers of things to go through to get to your mouth. And I have a mustache. I have a lot of facial hair. Like, it's fine,
I mean, me too.
But I can't imagine wearing a veil over this. How likely do you think it is that he is being tortured by, like, Black Ajah? They're, like, popping him into Teleran Riyadh and dropping him and then popping him back out again.
Oh, I mean, you could do something like that, but I just thought, like, I've had this dream before. Haven't we, like, all had this dream before,
Fair enough. And he is local, so...
Yeah, that's true as well.
Yeah.
It would be good way to torture someone.
Unlikely, but I had the thought of like, is he being tortured? We do know the Black Oddjaws in the city.
Yeah.
And they do have access to Teleron Riyadh.
Then another little kind of hints about how Teleron Riyadh works, where we see the tailor's tables held bolts of cloth and a cutler's knives and scissors. The ceiling hooks hung empty in a butcher's shop, and the shelves stood bare. And she's trying to figure this all out, and it's because, like, the hooks are always there, but the meat moves every day. So, like, you know, these tools and bolts of cloth might stay in the same place all the time. There might always be there, but the meat certainly isn't.
I think of the world of dreams as a reflection of the summation of what people see in the world, right? So we all go to sleep and we dream about the world that we saw that day. And that creates this reflection in the world of dreams. When everybody sees a hook in the same place, we all dream about the hook in that place. But sometimes there may be a jacket on it, sometimes there may not.
Right.
And so maybe you see it with a jacket and maybe I don't. And so there's sort of these conflicting visions that pop in and out constantly. And that's why doors are opening and closing, because sometimes people see them open, sometimes people see them close. They are things that change minute to minute.
The butcher's shelves are always there, but sometimes there's chicken and sometimes there's beef, and it's not always the same. Part of the kind of collective dreamland. So Egwene's going over this in her head, and this is maybe a page later, but she opens up a barn and sees none of the horses or cattle or whatever's usually there, but there's rats.
None of the domesticated animals.
Right. And she has the thought, pigeons and gulls, dogs, flies, and rats. Maybe a wise one would know why. As suddenly as that, she was back in the waste. With a scream, she fell flat on her back as the hairy, boar-like creature darted straight for her, looking as large as a small pony. Not a pig, she saw, as it leapt nimbly over her. The snout was too sharp and full of keen teeth, and it had 4 toes on each foot. Does anyone know what this is?
I think it's just a different kind of deer. I thought there was deer with...
Yeah, it could be. This thing, it seems to have bristly fur.
I mean, just a...
Keen teeth, 4 toes on each foot, and 4 legs. The size of a pony. Banana says tapir. Don't know what that is.
Is it tapir?
Nope, that's weird. It's like a fat anteater or something. Pig with a snout. Oh well, just curious if anyone knew right off the top of their head.
Yeah, I don't know if this is an exact analog for an animal in our world, or if it's just like
it may not be
a nasty boar-like animal that evolved to live in the waste.
Yeah. So she narrowly avoids getting trampled by this thing. She stopped brushing at her skirts when she saw the Aiel woman watching her with sharp blue eyes from 10 paces off. The woman was Avienda's age, no older than herself, but the wisps of hair that stuck out from under her shufa were so pale as to be almost white.
White hair.
So she's slowed? Is that the point, or is she just, like, very blonde?
Amis just always had white hair as a girl.
Oh, I think I vaguely remember that.
That's just one of the things that's part of her. As far as I can tell, it has nothing to do with the one power or channeling. She just had white hair as a young woman. And so that's the hint. We see her young here with white hair, and then we see her again as her actual age later with white hair.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. So she's right, because she's reliving her youth.
Exactly. She's going back to a time when she was a maiden of the spear. She's going back to that age, and she's just sort of... This is basically the wise one's version of flipping through your high school yearbook.
She's just going hunting for fun. Amis is between 40 and 50 years old, apparently. Skipping a bit, but Egwene starts talking to her.
And to soothe her, she was like, don't panic, and like puts herself in matching clothing.
Yeah.
Which is Kadansor, and it's like, you have no right to wear that.
Borderline offensive.
Right. It's like if you show up on an Indian reservation and see somebody in like classic garb, and you're like poof, and make yourself up, and it's like not that far away from blackface in terms of like offensiveness.
The woman did not lower her weapon. Instead, she frowned and said, "You have no right to wear the Kadansor, girl." And Egwene found herself standing there in her skin, the sun burning her from overhead, the ground searing her bare feet. For a moment, she gaped in disbelief, dancing from foot to foot. She had not thought it possible to change things about somebody else. So many possibilities, so many rules, that she did not know. Hurriedly, she thought herself back into stout shoes and the dark dress with its divided skirts, and at the same time, made the Aiel woman's garments vanish. She had to draw on Sidar to do it. The woman must have been concentrating on keeping Egwene naked. She had a flow ready to seize the spear if only the woman made to throw it. It was the Aiel woman's turn to look shocked.
Because Egwene just, I said she Happy Gilmore'd it, which is to say she has a hell of a lot of power, but no skill.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And just sort of came in brand new, has no idea what she's doing, and just smashes the hell out of the ball, right? Just all this raw power, which is totally knocks Amis on her butt for a second. Because you're just like, whoa, where did that... But obviously has no idea what she's doing, right? She doesn't know the rules of the game. Just like Happy Gilmore, no idea how to play golf.
It was the Aiel woman's turn to look shocked. She let the spear fall to her side, too, and Egwene seized the moment to shut her eyes and take herself back to Tanchico, back to the skeleton of that huge boar, or whatever it was. She barely gave it a second glance this time. She was growing tired of things that looked like boars and were not. How did she do that? No, it was wondering about how and why that keeps putting me off the path. This time, I'll stick to it. She did hesitate, though. Just as she had closed her eyes, it had seemed she saw another woman, beyond the Aiel woman, watching them both. A golden-haired woman holding a silver bow. You are letting wild fancies take you now. You've been listening to too many of Tom Maryland's stories. Brigida was long dead. She could not come again until the Horn of Valir called her back from the grave. Dead women, even heroes of legend, surely could not dream themselves into Teleran Riyadh.
Yeah, they just live there.
Right, they don't dream themselves there. That's just where they live.
Just hanging out there. Hi, Brigida.
It was only a moment's pause, though. I'm just going to read right on through. Shutting off futile speculation, she ran back to the square. How much time did she have left? The whole city to search, and time slipping away, and she as ignorant as when she started. If only she had some idea what to look for, or where. Running did not seem to tire her here in the world of dreams, but run as hard as she might, she would never cover the entire city before Elaine and Nynaeve woke her. She did not want to have to come back. A woman appeared suddenly among the flock of pigeons that had gathered in the square. Her gown was pale green. Oh, and the woman flies off with the pigeons, and this is what gives Egwene the idea to fly.
Totally.
Fly over the city instead of run through it.
Yeah, like on the surface, sounds like a great idea until you realize she's trying to, hide.
Yeah.
Again, if she knew the rules, it wouldn't be that hard to make herself invisible and make no sound.
Sure. We see the wise ones do that.
Totally.
Where they become transparent.
And I feel like Perrin figures that out eventually. He masks his smell and sound when he's creeping up on. I don't think he ever makes himself invisible, but he's able to mask his other senses.
I think that's right. Of course, it suddenly occurs to Egwene later that flying over the city is maybe not a good way to remain inconspicuous.
Right. And there's those 11 other Terran Grial and 11 other Black Ajah asleep right now who could be totally in Tanchico looking up at the sky being like, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's a fireball.
And then a tall woman was suddenly standing in the street ahead of her, slim, in a bulky brown skirt and loose white blouse, with a brown shawl around her shoulders and a folded scarf around her forehead to hold her white hair that spilled to her waist. Despite her plain clothes, she wore a great many necklaces and bracelets of gold and ivory or both. Fists planted on her hips, she stared straight at Egwene, frowning. Another fool woman who's dreamed herself where she has no right to be and doesn't believe what she's seeing, Egwene thought. She had the description of every woman who had gone with Leandrin, and this woman certainly matched none of them. But the woman did not vanish again. She stood there, as Egwene approached swiftly. Why doesn't she go? Why... Oh, light. She snatched for flows to weave lightning, to tangle the woman in air, fumbling in startled haste. Put your feet on the ground, girl, the woman barked. I had enough trouble finding you again without you flying off like some bird when I do. Abruptly, Egwene stopped flying. Her feet thumped hard on the pavement, and she staggered. It was the Aiel woman's voice, but this was an older woman. Not as old as Egwene had thought at first, in fact. She looked much younger than her white hair suggested, but with the voice and those sharp blue eyes, she was sure it was the same woman. You're different, Egwene says. You can be what you wish to be here. The woman sounded embarrassed, but only a little. At times, I like to remember. That is not important. You are from the White Tower? It has been long since they had a Dreamwalker. Very long. I am Amis, of the Nine Valleys Sept of the Tarad Aiel.
And so just there's a clue about the white hair that this is the same woman that she ran into before.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Just like 30 years younger.
yeah,
Yeah.
just like makes it explicit.
Or she was 30 years younger the first time because
Right.
she was,
This is her actual age.
yeah, having a fun time remembering her youth.
I was going to ask this question as well, but Ogre Tendencies beat me to it. How does she track Egwene there? She doesn't know the city, or...
I mean, we see people like Perrin and Egwene do things like this later. Maybe not with such a random encounter, but you can find a person.
I know Perrin is able to sort of smell the location they disappear to.
Where they will be. So,
yeah.
Stepper jumps and Perrin can jump right after him.
So I know Amis isn't using smell.
No, but we can assume that the mechanics are similar, This is Perrin's way of viewing the world is through, smells and scents.
So you think he's just he's interpreting...
Yeah, but they're...
It's like it'd be like a feeling to a wise one or something like that she could feel where you disappeared to and follow it.
That's what I'm going to go with, that Perrin can do that and he interprets it in one way, but any trained dreamer could do the same.
And I'm certainly Rand does it when he copies gateways. So it's like when he goes into the dream, when he's following the Forsaken, they're weaving gateways to move around Teleron-Riyadh, and he's able to see the residues and follow them that way.
Yeah. Which is, I want to say different, but I think kind of a similar concept. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That there's a residue.
We see a lot of...
Or a scent.
Connections between gateways, portal stones, the ways, and the world of dreams in terms of, Egwene figures out how to make a gateway when she travels to the world of dreams, moves through the world of dreams, then travels out of the world of dreams. And then she figures out how to do that just by cutting out the world of dreams.
Yeah.
just basically traveling through from one spot to the other instantly. The ways came from studying the portal stones, and the ways and skimming seem to go through the same space. So there's all these connections between those different elements.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of the way that compulsion and the water bond and the fade bond with the Trollocs and a bunch of other little things sort of, they're not exactly the same, but they all have these compulsion related,
similar elements,
bond related elements. Yeah. Egwene introduces herself to Amis, and Amis is like, "Yeah, you're a moron. You need help. Come to me and I'll teach you." Also, the confirmation of the evil in the city, and I want to talk about what that is when we get to it.
Okay. You are like a girl just wedded to the spear who thinks now she can wrestle men and leap mountains. For her, it means a few bruises and a valuable lesson in humility. For you, here, it could mean death. Amis eyed the white buildings around them and grimaced. Tanchico? In Tarabon? This city is dying, eating itself. There is darkness here, an evil, worse than men can make, or women. She looked at Egwene pointedly. You cannot see it or feel it, can you? And you want to hunt shadow runners and Teleran-Riyadh. Evil? Egwene said quickly. That could be them. Are you sure? If I told you what they look like, could you be certain it was them? I can describe them. I can describe one to her last braid. A child, Amis muttered, demanding a silver bracelet from her father this minute, when she knows nothing of trading or the making of bracelets. You have much to learn, far more than I can begin to teach you now. Come to the threefold land. I will have the word spread through the clans that an Aes Sedai called Egwene of Elvire is to be brought to me at Cold Rock's Hold. Give me your name, and show your great serpent ring, and you will have safe running. I am not there now, but I will return from Ruidian before you can arrive. Please, you must help me. I need to know if they are here. I have to know, but I cannot tell you. I do not know them, or this place, this Tanchico. You must come to me. What you do is dangerous, far more dangerous than you know. You must. Where are you going? Stay! Something seemed to snatch at Egwene, pulling her into the darkness. Amis's voice followed her, hollow and dwindling. You must come to me and learn. You must.
What's the evil in Tanchico?
Is it... I don't know, what is it?
I have 4 options.
Okay. One of my first instincts was to say, okay, the Black Aja probably isn't there yet. Or maybe they are?
I think they're there.
They might be there?
Yeah.
And then maybe one of the Forsaken.
Mogedian's there.
Mogedian's there. But possibly the Dark One's presence trying to corrode the seal that is in Tanchico?
The Dark One she may be feeling the Dark One's presence through the seal. Yes.
That's all I got.
Sad bracelets.
Sad bracelets. Do you think Amisa's ability to sense the evil is just something that comes from her adeptness at Teleran Riyadh? Can Amis channel, or is she just a dreamwalker? Can't remember.
Amis is a channeler, yeah. She's sort of as close to an Avienda analog, only older, that you can get.
Gotcha.
She was a
pretty strong channeler.
Pretty strong channeler who started out as a Maiden of the Spear and was adopted into the Wise Ones and didn't want to go and was stubborn, and yeah, there's a lot going on. So, and it's very difficult to know whether it's something in the world of dreams. I mean, I feel like Egwene sort of senses something's off, but doesn't know enough to interpret that.
Yeah, and so that's kind of what I'm thinking, that Amisa's probably feeling the Forsaken and possibly the presence of the Eye of the Dark One, maybe I should say. His attention is there because one of the seals is there.
My headcanon is that it's the sad bracelets.
Really?
Just because when you touch them, they give off that sense of evil and despair.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like, and they are such an important part of Rand's descent into madness.
Yeah.
Forcing him to kill a woman in order to prevent himself from killing the girl he loves. I mean, it's such, and they have such strong feelings associated with them.
Yeah, I dig it.
So that's my opinion. But the research I did before this episode didn't give me a definitive answer. No one seemed to have any additional ideas.
I think one of those guesses is we're probably on.
Or I should say, there was a lot of people had those ideas, but there was no way to narrow it down.
Gotcha.
Like, there was no, this is what it is. There's a line later where it's like, oh, once we got rid of the seal, there's no correlation as far as I can tell. Once again, it's been about 2 weeks since the last time we thanked our patrons, so it's time to say thank you to everybody out there who's supporting us again. I'm going to start back on November 10th with Nicholas Freeburn. And I think I thanked you last time, but thank you again.
We weren't sure, and we don't want to skip anyone. Thank you, Mr. Freeburn.
And then we were supported by Stefan Mutic.
Thank you, Stefan.
And then US Prez 72.
Was that Nixon?
I think so. Yeah, or was it Reagan? No, must have been Nixon. Reagan was 80s. Nixon, that's got to be Nixon. I hope you're not a crook. Howell Brandenburg supported us. Thank you.
Thank you, Howell.
A certain Space Chewy, what do they call it?
Our possibly most famous fan of the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast, Chewbacca, complete with a picture. So it's obviously really Chewbacca.
Here, if I was good at it, I'd make a chewy noise right here, but I'm not.
Yeah, you don't want to hear that. I can't do it either.
Editing it in right now.
Nice.
Denny Cade.
Thank you, Denny.
Matthew Zupak.
I think it's Zupka.
It really is. I don't know how I got Zupak out of that.
Close.
Well, AKA.
Thanks, Matt.
Am I dyslexic?
Margot. Her
Hello,
name's
Margot.
familiar.
Yeah, Margot Holton Graybill.
Thanks, Margot.
Margot's hanging out with us for the first time tonight, so we appreciate that. Liesel. Thank you, Liesel.
Liesel, see you later. Maybe. I don't know if I'm going out. Maybe.
Maybe you'll be pouring us some beers later tonight. Jeff Kidder. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thanks for the big pledge.
Laura Smith. Thank you.
Thank you,
That was
Laura.
great. Bill Gibson.
We appreciate you, Bill.
Robert Nutley. Great last name.
Nutley. That was the name of the town that my mom lives in.
Rob Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards.
Kirk Yusuf.
We appreciate you, Kirk.
May the force be with you. No, wait, live long
Or
and
something.
prosper. See how many people I can piss off. And that's it. Thank you so much for everybody who supported us in the last couple of weeks. We've really, really appreciated it. It's been just fantastic to watch that the number
Yeah,
of people
guys.
who are willing to support us.
It's
Keep
still kind
growing.
of overwhelming sometimes. We just logged into Discord. We were a little bit behind on recording, so we added an extra night this week, which is a random Wednesday that we're doing this recording. And there's like a ton of people here hanging out and chatting. It's just awesome that this active community has grown out of what we started doing. It has its own life and mind now. We didn't create this awesome community. You created this awesome community for you. I mean, I guess Seth opened the server and then people started showing up. Christine says, and now we won't leave. It's hard to keep up. I see that people tag me in threads sometimes, but then they're like so deep back if I log in 2 days later, just see what's going on, that I can't even find them without some effort. And I don't know. I can't keep up. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll actually get to the point where we're doing this full time and then I can hang out in Discord for like hours a day. Well, Ferengi, if you have something you really want to get at me, then definitely send it as a DM because I will get back at some point. But if it's just like in a thread getting buried, I might not find it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, if you really want us to see something, putting it in the middle of Dark Friend Social in a thread is not always going to happen. We try. We really do.
By the time I get there, it's like 500 messages back, and it's just...
I have to read for half an hour just to get the context to figure out what's going on at the time.
Yeah.
I'm okay with dick pics as long as it's of a guy named Dick. Dick
Only
Cheney.
if they're actually pictures of Nixon.
Tricky Dick.
Unsolicited Richard Nixon photographs.
The thing is, you have to censor them and make sure they're fuzzy first, so they can't actually tell what they are. And you say, "Here's a dick pic."
Richard Nixon with his face blurred out.
Totally.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?